Human, do you have a mate yet? My mother bakes and slaughters well. Please take her as your wife." Lieutenant Commander had seen many strange things during his 12 years of service in deep space. He had walked on planets where the sky burned orange and the rain fell upward. He had met beings made of living crystal who sang in frequencies that human ears could barely hear. He had once shaken hands with a creature that existed in 4 dimensions at once, which had given him a headache that lasted for 3 days. But nothing in all his years of exploration had prepared him for what was happening right now. He was standing in the diplomatic reception hall of Space Station Harmony, a joint outpost that humanity shared with several alien species. The hall was a large circular room with tall windows that looked out into the endless black of space. Stars glittered like diamonds scattered across dark velvet, and the distant glow of a nebula painted one corner of the view in shades of purple and pink. Was not looking at the stars. He was looking at the 7-foot-tall alien who was kneeling in front of him. The alien was a member of one of the most feared warrior species in the known galaxy. His exoskeleton was the color of dried blood, a deep reddish-brown that gleamed under the lights of the reception hall. He had 6 limbs, 4 of which he was using to support himself in his kneeling position, while the other 2 were extended toward, holding something wrapped in shimmering cloth. This head was dominated by 2 massive compound eyes that reflected its bewildered face in hundreds of tiny images. His mandibles, each one as long as forearm and sharp enough to cut through steel, clicked together as he spoke. "Human," the alien said, his words translated into English by the small device attached to his throat. "I am 3rd son of Grand Matriarch of the Northern Reaches. I come before you today with great hope in my hearts." Notice that he said hearts plural. They had 3 of them. "I bring you this gift," continued, pushing the wrapped bundle toward. "It is the front leg of a sand beast from our home world. My mother killed it herself with her own mandibles in single combat. It took her only 6 hours to bring it down. She is very skilled." Looked at the bundle. It was about the size of a human leg, wrapped in cloth that sparkled with what might have been actual gemstones. He could see the shape of something hard and angular beneath the fabric. "That's very impressive," said slowly, "but I'm not sure why you're giving this to me." His antennae, which had been standing straight up with excitement, drooped slightly. "Did I not explain clearly? I apologize. My tutors told me that humans appreciate direct communication." He took a deep breath, which involved a complex series of spiracles on his thorax opening and closing in sequence. "Human," he said formally, "my mother, Grand Matriarch, wishes to take you as her mate. She has instructed me to tell you of her many qualities. She is a fierce hunter who has killed over 300 large prey animals. She owns 17 ships, 4 asteroid mining operations, and 2 moons. She has won 47 official duels and has never been defeated in combat." His brain seemed to stop working for a moment. He stood there, his mouth slightly open, trying to process what he had just heard. "She also bakes," added helpfully. 17 varieties of nutrient paste, very delicious. Well, delicious too. She has been working on a recipe that will not kill humans. She has made much progress. Only 30% mortality rate now." "I'm sorry," managed to say. "Did you just ask me to marry your mother?" "Yes," said, his compound eyes brightening with hope. "Will you accept?" Had received strange offers during his time in space. He had been offered exotic pets, rare minerals, and once an entire planet that turned out to be haunted by the ghosts of an extinct civilization. But he had never, in all his years, been offered someone's mother as a wife. "I need to sit down," he said. Immediately looked concerned. "Are you unwell? Should I call for a medical unit? My mother would be very upset if her potential mate died before she could meet him." "No, I'm not dying. I just need a moment to think." Walked over to one of the benches that lined the walls of the reception hall and sat down heavily. Followed him, still carrying the wrapped sand beast leg. his 6 limbs moving with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature his size. "I have confused you," said, sitting down next to. The bench creaked under his weight. "I apologize. Perhaps I should explain more about my mother's qualities. She is very strong. She can lift 4 times her own body weight. She has excellent vision and can see in 17 different spectrums of light. Her mandibles are the sharpest in our clan, and she maintains them with great care." "It's not that I don't appreciate the offer," said, choosing his words carefully. He had been trained in diplomatic communication, but nothing in his training had covered this specific situation. "Your mother sounds like a very accomplished individual, but humans don't usually get married based on hunting skills or mandible sharpness." Tilted his head, a gesture that they used to indicate confusion. "Then what do you base it on?" "Love mostly, compatibility, shared interests, spending time together and getting to know each other." "My mother is interested in many things," said eagerly. "Combat, territory expansion, the collection of trophies from defeated enemies. She has an entire room in her home dedicated to the skulls of those she has bested in battle. She also enjoys gardening, although her plants are carnivorous and have killed several servants." Rubbed his forehead. A headache was beginning to form behind his eyes. "What I mean is," he tried again, "humans usually choose their own mates. We spend time with someone, develop feelings for them, and then decide together if we want to be in a relationship. It's not usually arranged by family members." His antennae drooped even further. "This is very different from our customs. Among the families arrange matings to strengthen alliances and combine bloodlines. The feelings you speak of develop after the bonding ceremony, not before." "I understand that different cultures have different practices," said, "and I respect your traditions, but I can't agree to marry someone I've never met, no matter how impressive her hunting skills are." For a long moment was silent. His compound eyes seemed to dim slightly, and his mandibles clicked together in what had learned was an expression of disappointment. "I have failed," he said quietly. "My mother will be very upset. She has been preparing for this proposal for many cycles. She had a new hunting trophy mounted especially for this occasion." Felt a twinge of guilt which surprised him. He hadn't done anything wrong, but the sight of the dejected alien made him feel like he had kicked a puppy. A 7-foot-tall, heavily armored, potentially dangerous puppy, but still. "Listen," he said gently, "it's not about you or your mother. I'm sure she's wonderful by standards. It's just that humans have different customs around these things." "I understand," said, although his body language suggested that he did not entirely understand. "I will inform my mother of your answer. Perhaps she will try again with a better offer. She has many more moons she could include in the dowry." Before could respond, the doors to the reception hall slid open, and a human woman walked in. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, and the kind of calm, steady expression that came from decades of dealing with impossible situations. Her uniform marked her as a captain, and immediately straightened up. "Captain," he said, "I didn't expect you here." Captain took in the scene with a single glance. The kneeling, the wrapped bundle that was clearly some kind of body part, its expression of helpless bewilderment. "Another marriage proposal?" she asked. "Third one this week," confirmed. Captain sighed. It was not an angry sigh or a frustrated sigh. It was the sigh of someone who had seen too much strangeness in her life to be surprised by anything anymore. "Isn't it?" she said to the young. "I remember you from the welcome ceremony last month." Rose to his feet and performed the gesture of respect, which involved raising all 6 limbs and bowing his head. "Captain, it is an honor. I was just presenting a marriage proposal to Human on behalf of my mother." "I gathered that from the severed limb." "It is a sand beast leg, a trophy of great honor." "I'm sure it is." Captain turned to, "Lieutenant Commander, I need you in the conference room. We have a situation that requires immediate attention." had never been so grateful for a work emergency in his entire life. "Of course, Captain, right away." He stood up and nodded too. "I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer. Please tell your mother that I'm honored by her offer." Clutched the sand beast leg to his chest. "I will tell her. Perhaps she will understand. Or perhaps she will declare war on your species. It is difficult to predict her moods." Froze halfway to the door. "I'm sorry, did you say declare war?" "It is unlikely," said quickly. "She has only declared war over rejected proposals twice before, and one of those times was a misunderstanding." "That's good to know." Followed Captain out of the reception hall, his mind spinning with everything that had just happened. Behind him, he could hear mandibles clicking in what might have been disappointment or might have been the beginnings of a war cry. It was sometimes hard to tell the difference. The conference room was located 3 levels up from the reception hall, in the administrative section of Station Harmony. It was a medium-sized room with a long table in the center, and screens on every wall that could display everything from star maps to communication feeds. Right now, the screens were all blank, and the room was empty except for Captain and. "Take a seat," Captain said, gesturing to one of the chairs around the table. "We need to talk about the situation." Sat down, grateful to be off his feet. The encounter with had left him feeling drained in a way that hours of physical labor never did. "Permission to speak freely, Captain." "Granted." "What in the name of all that is good and holy is going on with the— I've been proposed to 3 times this week. Dr. Pierce told me she's received 17 proposals. Even Ensign, who's been on the station for less than a month, got one yesterday." Captain leaned back in her chair and folded her arms across her chest. "It started about 3 years ago during first contact. Do you know the story?" "I know the basics. First contact team arrived at Prime, there were some initial tensions, and then somehow we ended up as allies." That's the official version. The unofficial version is considerably more interesting. Captain pulled up a video file on one of the screens. "This is footage from the first meeting between humans and the High Council." The video showed a large chamber filled with of various sizes and colors. They were arranged in a semicircle around a raised platform, where a group of humans stood looking very small and very nervous. "They had a reputation at the time," Captain continued. "They were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most dangerous species in existence. They had never lost a territorial dispute. Every species that encountered them either submitted to their demands or was destroyed. The first contact team was basically expecting to die." On the screen, a massive individual with an exoskeleton as black as space itself, stepped forward and spoke. The translation appeared at the bottom of the screen. "Small soft creatures," they said, "you have entered our territory. By our laws, you must prove yourselves worthy to exist in our presence, or you will be destroyed. What strength do you offer?" Watched as the humans on the platform exchanged nervous glances. Then, to his surprise, one of them stepped forward. She was a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, with red hair pulled back in a ponytail and an expression of determined confidence. "I'll show you strength," she said. They made a sound that the translator interpreted as amusement. You are tiny. You have no armor, no natural weapons, no venom glands. What could you possibly show us?" The woman smiled. "How about an arm wrestling match?" There was a moment of confused silence. The concept of arm wrestling did not exist in culture, so the translation software struggled to convey what she meant. Eventually, she had to demonstrate by having one of her fellow team members hold her hand while she pushed against them. "Ah," the black said, "a contest of strength, but this is not a fair test. Our upper limbs are 3 times the length of yours." "Then we'll use legs," the woman said. "You have legs, I have legs. Whoever pushes the other back first wins." Leaned forward in his seat, fascinated. "Is this going where I think it's going?" "Watch," Captain said. On the screen, the war chief agreed to the contest. A line was drawn on the floor, and the human woman and the massive alien stood facing each other, their feet positioned on either side of the line. At a signal, they both began to push. The clearly expected to win easily. He was 3 times her size, covered in natural armor and had legs like tree trunks. But as the seconds ticked by, something unexpected happened. He didn't move her. She didn't move him either at first. They stood locked together, straining against each other, neither giving ground. The watching began to murmur in surprise. The war chief's mandibles clicked together in what might have been frustration or disbelief. And then, slowly, impossibly, the human woman began to push him back. It was not a dramatic victory. She moved him perhaps 2 feet before they broke apart, both breathing heavily. But she had done it. A creature less than half his size, with no armor and no natural weapons, had pushed one of the greatest warriors in history backward. The chamber erupted in sounds that translators struggled to interpret: shock, amazement, and underneath it all, something that sounded almost like awe. "That woman," Captain said, pausing the video, "was Ensign Carol Murphy. She's a commander now, stationed at the research facility on IV. And that moment changed everything about how they saw humanity." Stared at the frozen image on the screen. How is that possible? They are massive. They have natural armor and enhanced musculature. How could a human possibly outpush one of them? Several reasons. First, humans have an unusually high strength-to-weight ratio compared to most species. Our muscles are dense and efficient. Second, Carol Murphy is a who has been training since she was 15 years old. Third, and most importantly, humans have something that they had never encountered before. Captain tapped a button, and the screen changed to show a series of scientific diagrams. "We have endurance." Endurance. Most predator species in the galaxy evolved to use bursts of energy. They sprint, attack, and then rest. They are the same way. Their muscles are incredibly powerful, but they're designed for short, intense efforts. In a quick test of strength, the war chief would have destroyed Carol. But when she turned it into a sustained pushing match, she was able to outlast him. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," said, remembering his biology classes from years ago. "We used to chase prey across the savannah until it collapsed from exhaustion." Exactly. And when they learned about that, when they found out that humans could keep going long after other species would have given up, they became fascinated with us. Captain pulled up another series of images. They started studying humanity with an intensity that bordered on obsession. They watched recordings of human athletic competitions. They read about human history and the feats of endurance our species has achieved. They were amazed that we could survive in temperature ranges that would kill most species. They couldn't believe that we could heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. And when they learned about human space exploration, about how we had spent centuries striving to reach the stars despite having no natural ability to survive in space, they were absolutely awed. The images showed various human achievements: marathon runners crossing finish lines, mountain climbers reaching distant peaks, astronauts floating in the void of space, kept alive only by the thin layer of their suits. To the captain continued, humans represent something they had never seen before, a species that succeeds not through overwhelming power but through sheer determination. We don't give up. We don't stop. No matter how impossible the odds, we keep trying. And to a culture that values strength above all else, that kind of persistence is the ultimate form of power. Was beginning to understand. So when they propose marriage to humans, they're trying to bring that persistence into their bloodlines. They believe that human mates will produce stronger, more resilient offspring. More importantly, having a human mate has become an incredible status symbol in society. It proves that you were impressive enough to attract one of the most desirable beings in the galaxy. But we're smaller than them, softer. We don't have natural weapons or armor. That's what makes it even more impressive to them. You don't need those things. You have something better. You have the will to keep going no matter what. Captain smiled slightly. To the humans are like mythological creatures, tiny, fragile beings who somehow manage to defeat every challenge through pure stubbornness. Sat back in his chair, trying to process everything he had just learned. It was strange to think of humanity as being impressive. On Earth, humans were just humans. They had problems and weaknesses like any other species. But out here, in the vast expanse of the galaxy, their unique traits made them stand out in ways they had never imagined. "So what do we do about the proposals?" he asked. "I can't marry every matriarch who takes an interest in me," and mentioned that his mother might declare war if she's offended. "That's what this meeting is about," Captain said. "We need to find a solution that respects customs while also protecting our crew from unwanted advances, and we need to do it soon. The situation is getting worse." "How much worse?" Captain pulled up a new screen showing a list of names and numbers. "This is the current count of marriage proposals received by Station Harmony personnel in the last month alone." Scanned the list and felt his eyes widen. Dr. Pierce had received 43 proposals. Chief Engineer Samuel Gray had received 51. Communications Officer Lisa, who knew as a quiet, bookish woman who preferred to spend her free time reading, had somehow received 78. 78 proposals, said. For Lisa, how did that happen? "There was an incident about 2 months ago," Captain explained. "A diplomatic crisis between thee and the collective nearly led to war. Lisa spent 36 consecutive hours translating negotiations, barely stopping to eat or drink. The observers were so impressed by her endurance that word spread throughout their society. Now she's considered one of the most desirable humans in the sector." "Does she know?" "She's been hiding in her quarters for the last week, afraid to come out. Every time she does, another shows up with a hunting trophy and a marriage proposal." Felt sympathy for his colleague. Lisa was a talented officer, but she was not the type who enjoyed being the center of attention. Being pursued by dozens of 7-foot-tall warrior aliens must be a nightmare for her. "We have to do something," he said. "This isn't fair to the crew." "I agree. That's why I've called a meeting of the senior staff for tomorrow morning. We're going to brainstorm solutions." Captain stood up and walked toward the door. "In the meantime, try to avoid any more proposals, and if you see again, be polite. The last thing we need is to start an interstellar war because someone was rude about a sand beast leg." Nodded and watched her leave. Then he sat alone in the conference room, staring at the list of proposals on the screen and wondering how humanity had gone from being unknown to being the most sought-after species in the galaxy. The next morning, made his way to the main briefing room on the command level. He had not slept well, his dreams filled with images of matriarchs demanding his hand in marriage, while their children presented him with increasingly disturbing gifts. In one particularly memorable nightmare, he had been chased through the station by a horde of aliens carrying what appeared to be human-sized wedding rings made of polished chitin. He was not the only one who looked tired. Dr. Pierce was already seated at the conference table, her usually neat brown hair slightly disheveled and dark circles under her eyes. Chief Engineer Samuel Gray sat next to her, a cup of something that smelled like extremely strong coffee clutched in his hands. Lisa was there too, sitting in the corner as far from the door as possible, as if she expected it to burst in at any moment. Captain entered last, followed by Commander David Hayes, the station's second in command. Commander Hayes was a tall man with graying hair and a perpetually serious expression. He had been in the service even longer than Captain, and his experience showed in every line of his weathered face. "Let's get started," Captain said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I've briefed Commander Hayes on the situation. David, what's your assessment?" Commander Hayes pulled up a display on the central screen. It showed a map of space, with various symbols indicating clan territories and political boundaries. The marriage proposal situation is more serious than we initially realized, he said. According to our intelligence, the pursuit of human mates has become a major competition among clans. Several matriarchs have declared their intention to secure human partners at any cost. Any cost? Dr. Pierce asked. What does that mean exactly? In the last 2 weeks alone, there have been 17 duels fought over the right to propose to specific humans. 3 of those duels resulted in fatalities. A heavy silence fell over the room, exchanged glances with his colleagues, seeing his own concern reflected in their faces. They're killing each other over us, Lisa said, her voice small and strained. They take courtship very seriously, Commander Hayes replied. To them, securing a human mate is worth dying for. It brings honor to their entire clan. This is insane, Samuel Gray muttered into his coffee. We're just people, we're not prizes to be won. To them, you are, Captain said. That's the problem we need to solve. We have to find a way to reduce the competition without insulting the or damaging our alliance. For the next hour, the group discussed various options. Someone suggested that humans could simply refuse all proposals, but Commander Hayes pointed out that mass rejection might be seen as an insult to culture as a whole. Another suggestion was to create fake human partners for everyone on the station, but that was deemed too complicated to maintain long-term. Dr. Pierce proposed implementing a quota system where only a certain number of proposals would be accepted per month, but that seemed likely to make the competition even more intense as clans fought over the limited slots. Finally, Samuel Gray spoke up. He had been quiet for most of the meeting, staring at his coffee cup with a thoughtful expression. What if we change how they see us? He said. What do you mean? Captain asked. Right now, they want human mates because they think we're impressive. They see us as prizes, trophies, symbols of status. But what if we could make them understand that we're more complicated than that? That being with a human isn't just about acquiring a status symbol, but about something deeper and more difficult. Lisa leaned forward slightly. Like what? Like emotional connection, like the kind of relationships humans actually have. Samuel set down his coffee cup. I've been reading about history and culture. They're not purely logical beings. They have art, music, literature. They feel things deeply. But their courtship customs are based entirely on practical considerations. Strength, resources, political alliance. There's no concept of romantic love in the way humans understand it. You want to teach thee about love? Asked, not sure whether to be impressed or skeptical. Not exactly. I want to show them that human relationships are more complicated than they think. That you can't just acquire a human mate by presenting the best hunting trophy or offering the most moons. That being in a relationship with a human requires understanding, patience, and vulnerability. Commander Hayes frowned. Vulnerability isn't something they typically value. That's exactly my point. If we can make them understand that human partnership requires them to be vulnerable, to open themselves up emotionally, it might make the whole thing seem less appealing, or at least less like a simple competition that can be won through traditional means. Captain was quiet for a long moment, considering the proposal. It's unconventional, she said finally, but so is this entire situation. Dr. Pierce, what's your professional opinion? You're our expert on. Dr. Pierce tapped her fingers on the table, thinking. It could work, she said slowly. They have shown remarkable adaptability in their interactions with other species. They're not stuck in their ways the way some cultures are. If we could present human relationship customs as something valuable and worthy of respect, rather than just something different, they might be willing to engage with them. But there's a risk, she continued. If we get this wrong, if we come across as arrogant or dismissive of their culture, we could make things much worse. They have a strong sense of pride. They don't respond well to being condescended to. Then we don't condescend, said. We share. We invite them to learn about us the same way we've learned about them. Make it an exchange rather than a lecture. The room was quiet as everyone considered this approach. It was risky, certainly. But the alternative, letting the current situation continue to escalate, was arguably riskier. All right, Captain said finally. Let's develop this idea further. Samuel, I want you to work with Dr. Pierce on creating a presentation about human relationships, something that explains our customs without being preachy or condescending. I want you to be our primary liaison with the delegation. You've shown a talent for diplomatic communication. What about the proposals that are already pending? Lisa asked. I have 78 expecting answers. We'll request a temporary pause while we prepare our cultural exchange. The value proper ceremony. If we tell them we're preparing something important, they should be willing to wait. Captain stood up. Let's get to work. We have a lot to do. Over the next 3 weeks, the station buzzed with activity. Samuel and Dr. Pierce worked late into the night preparing materials about human relationships. They gathered stories, examples, and explanations that would help them understand the complexity of human emotional bonds. Meanwhile, spent his days meeting with various members of the delegation, laying the groundwork for the upcoming presentation. He found himself developing an unexpected friendship with, who was eager to learn about human customs despite his initial disappointment over the rejected proposal. I don't understand, said one afternoon as they sat in the station's observation lounge, looking out at the stars. You say that humans choose their own mates, but how do you know who to choose? Without family guidance, how can you be sure you're making the right decision? We can't be sure, admitted. That's part of it. Human relationships involve risk. You meet someone, you spend time with them, you develop feelings. And then you have to decide whether to trust those feelings enough to commit to that person. But what if you're wrong? What if the person you choose turns out to be unsuitable? Sometimes that happens. Relationships fail. People get hurt. It's one of the most painful experiences a human can go through. Santini twitched in what had learned to recognize as confusion. Then why do it at all? Why take such a risk? Thought about the question for a moment before answering. Because when it works, when you find someone you truly connect with, it's one of the best experiences in existence. The risk is what makes it meaningful. If there was no chance of failure, the success wouldn't mean anything. This is very strange to me, said. Among my people, the goal of courtship is to minimize risk. We gather information, we evaluate potential mates, we negotiate terms. Everything is done to ensure the highest chance of success. And how often does that lead to happiness? Was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. I'm not sure happiness is something we think about when it comes to bonding. We think about honor, duty, the continuation of our bloodlines. Personal happiness is considered secondary. That makes me sad, said honestly. Everyone deserves to be happy. Even aliens with sharp mandibles who keep trying to make you marry their mothers. Laughed, even them, especially them actually. You seem like a good person, I hope you find happiness someday. Made a sound that the translator interpreted as pleased embarrassment. You are very kind, human. I begin to understand why my mother was so eager to claim you. Please tell me she's not still planning to declare war. I convinced her to wait for your presentation. She is very curious about what you will say. As the weeks passed, noticed something changing in the atmosphere of the station. The visitors seemed different somehow. They still stared at humans with obvious interest, but there was less of the predatory assessment that had characterized their earlier interactions. Instead, there was something that looked almost like curiosity. They were watching humans not as potential acquisitions, but as genuinely interesting beings worthy of study. He also noticed that more were trying to interact with humans socially. They attended the station's recreational events, asked questions about human hobbies and interests, and made awkward attempts at what might have been friendship. It was strange and sometimes uncomfortable, but it also felt like progress. One evening was in the station's small gymnasium, working through his exercise routine, when he heard the door open behind him. He turned to see Grand Matriarch standing in the entrance. She was enormous, nearly 9 feet tall, with an exoskeleton so dark it seemed to absorb the light around her. Her compound eyes glittered with intelligence, and her mandibles were as sharp and dangerous as her son had described. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature her size, each step precise and controlled. His heart began to beat faster. He had dealt with powerful aliens before, but there was something about that made his instincts scream danger. This was a being who had killed hundreds of prey animals with her bare hands, who had fought and won countless duels, who owned moons and commanded fleets. Grand Matriarch, he said, hopping his voice didn't tremble too much. I wasn't expecting you. Walked further into the gymnasium, her eyes scanning the exercise equipment with what might have been curiosity. My son speaks highly of you, she said. He says you have been kind to him. Is a good person. I enjoy his company. He also says that you told him everyone deserves happiness, including aliens with sharp mandibles. Felt his face grow warm. I did say that. Stopped a few feet away from him. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Had to crane his neck to look at her face. This is a strange philosophy, she said. Among my people, happiness is earned through achievement, through victory, through the accumulation of power and resources. You cannot simply deserve happiness. You must fight for it. Humans see it differently, said carefully. We believe that every conscious being has inherent worth, that everyone has the right to pursue happiness simply by virtue of existing. Even the weak, even those who cannot fight or hunt or conquer. Especially them. Strength isn't just physical. There are many kinds of strength and many ways to contribute to the world around you. Was quiet for a long moment. Her compound eyes studied with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. My son says you refused my proposal because humans choose their own mates based on something called love, she said finally. He tried to explain this concept to me, but I don't think I understood it. Will you explain? Took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment all their preparation had been leading to. Love is complicated, he began. It's a feeling of deep connection with another being, a sense that you understand them and they understand you, that you care about them as much as your own, maybe even more. This sounds like what we call clan loyalty. It's similar but more personal. Clan loyalty is about groups. Love is about individuals. It's about seeing someone for exactly who they are, their strengths and weaknesses and everything in between, and accepting all of it, wanting all of it. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. And this love determines who you choose as a mate. Usually, humans want partners who they love and who love them back. It's not about what the other person can provide for you, their resources or their status or their skills. It's about the connection itself, the feeling of not being alone in the universe. But everyone is alone, said. We are born alone and we die alone. Connection is just an illusion we create to make the time in between more bearable. Shook his head. I don't think it's an illusion. I think connection is one of the most real things in existence. When you love someone, really love them, you carry a part of them with you wherever you go. You're never truly alone because they're always there in your heart, in your mind. And if they love you back, you're in their heart too, existing together even when you're physically apart. Stared at him for a long time. Her expression was unreadable, but something in her posture seemed different. Less aggressive, perhaps, more contemplative. I have lived for 300 of your years, she said quietly. I have conquered worlds, defeated enemies without number, accumulated more power and wealth than most beings can imagine. And yet, she trailed off, her antennae drooping slightly. And yet, prompted gently. And yet I have never felt what you describe. This connection, this sense of carrying someone with you. I have had mates, alliances of convenience that served political purposes, but I don't think I have ever loved. There was something in her voice that hadn't expected, something that sounded almost like sadness. It's never too late, he said. Love doesn't have an age limit. Made a sound that the translator couldn't quite interpret. You are very unusual human. My son was right to speak well of you. Does this mean you're no longer going to declare war if I won't marry you? For the first time, made a sound that was unmistakably laughter. It was a strange sound, clicking and chittering, but it was definitely laughter. I was never going to declare war, she admitted. I told to say that to make you take the proposal more seriously, a negotiating tactic. Felt relief wash over him, followed by a spark of annoyance. That was not very nice. I know, among my people, that kind of manipulation is considered a sign of cleverness, but I am beginning to think that human customs might be wiser in some ways. She turned toward the door. I look forward to your presentation tomorrow. I suspect it will be very educational. She left without another word, her massive form disappearing through the doorway with surprising silence. Stood alone in the gymnasium, his heart still racing, wondering if he had just witnessed something important beginning to change. The day of the presentation arrived with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The main auditorium of Station Harmony had been transformed into a cultural exchange venue. Seats had been modified to accommodate beings of various sizes, from human standard all the way up to dimensions. Screens had been installed on every wall, ready to display visual aids in multiple formats suitable for different visual systems. The audience that filed in was impressive. Grand Matriarch led a delegation of over 30 high-ranking, including clan leaders, military commanders, and cultural advisors. Recognized among them, sitting close to his mother and looking both excited and nervous. Captain opened the presentation with a formal welcome, acknowledging the importance of the gathering and expressing humanity's gratitude for the alliance with the. Then she turned the floor over to. He walked to the center of the stage, feeling the weight of dozens of compound eyes watching him. The translator device on his collar hummed softly, ready to convert his words into sounds that could understand. Thank you all for coming, he began. We've asked you here today to share something important about human culture, something that we believe might help us all understand each other better. He tapped a control on the podium and the screens around the room lit up with images. Not images of human strength or endurance, the things they had been fascinated by. Instead, images of human connection. Families gathered around dinner tables, friends laughing together, couples holding hands, parents carrying children. When humans first made contact with the, continued, you were impressed by our physical capabilities, our strength, our endurance, our ability to survive in harsh conditions, and we were honored by your respect. But we realized that you might have gotten an incomplete picture of what makes humanity special. He paused, looking out at the audience. They were watching intently, their antennae tilted forward in interest. The truth is, our physical abilities are only one part of what makes us who we are, and they're not even the most important part. What truly defines humanity is our capacity for connection, for love. He spoke for over an hour. He told stories of human relationships, both romantic and otherwise. He explained the concept of friendship, the bonds between people who choose to care for each other without any practical benefit. He talked about family love, the fierce protectiveness that parents feel for their children. He described romantic love, the deep and sometimes terrifying experience of opening your heart to another being. He also talked about the difficulties, the pain of loss, the risk of rejection, the vulnerability required to truly connect with another person. He didn't paint a picture of human relationships as perfect or easy. He showed them as they really were, complicated and challenging and sometimes heartbreaking. Throughout it all, he emphasized one central idea. Human connection was not about what you could get from another person. It was about what you could share with them. It was about creating something together that neither of you could create alone. When he finished, the auditorium was silent. Stood at the podium, suddenly uncertain whether he had succeeded or failed. The faces were unreadable, their compound eyes reflecting the light from the screens in complex patterns. Then Grand Matriarch rose from her seat. "Human," she said, her voice carrying through the silent room. "What you have described is deeply foreign to our culture. We have never considered vulnerability to be a source of strength. We have never thought of connection as something more valuable than conquest." His heart sank. He had failed. All their preparation, all their careful planning, and in the end they simply couldn't understand. "But," continued, "you have given us much to think about." She walked down from her seat and approached the stage. Stood his ground, though every instinct told him to step back from the massive predator approaching him. "For 3 years, we have pursued human mates because we believed it would bring honor to our clans. We saw you as prizes to be won, trophies to be displayed. We did not see you as individuals with your own needs and desires." She stopped at the edge of the stage, looking up with an expression he had never seen on a face before. "You have shown us that we were wrong, not because our customs are bad, but because they are incomplete. We have been so focused on what we could gain from human mates that we never stopped to ask what we would need to give." She turned to address the assembled. "The humans speak of vulnerability, of opening yourself to another being knowing that they might hurt you. To us, this has always seemed like weakness, but I begin to think that it might be the greatest strength of all, the courage to risk pain for the chance of connection." Murmurs spread through the delegation, saw confusion on some faces, skepticism on others, but he also saw something else: interest, curiosity, the beginning of understanding. "I hereby withdraw my proposal to Human," announced. "Not because I no longer find him worthy, but because I have learned that worthiness is not determined by strength or resources or status. It is determined by the connection between two beings, and connection cannot be demanded. It must be offered and accepted freely." She turned back to, "Thank you for teaching us this lesson. It is more valuable than any hunting trophy or conquered territory." Found his voice. "Thank you for being willing to listen, Grand Matriarch. That takes its own kind of courage." Made the sound of laughter again. "Perhaps, or perhaps we are simply curious beings who cannot resist learning new things. The universe is vast, Human. There is always more to discover." The presentation ended with something unprecedented. A cultural advisor rose to ask questions about human relationships, not questions designed to figure out how to win human mates, but genuine questions about how humans lived and loved. Other followed, and what had been a one-way presentation became a true exchange of ideas. Answered questions for hours, supported by Dr. Pierce and other members of the crew. They talked about marriage ceremonies, family structures, the way human children were raised. They discussed friendship, professional relationships, the bonds between communities. By the end, everyone in the room was exhausted but somehow energized at the same time. Something had shifted, could feel it. The dynamic between humans and had changed in a fundamental way. In the weeks that followed, the transformation became more visible. Marriage proposals continued, but they were different now. Instead of presenting hunting trophies and lists of accomplishments, suitors began trying to establish genuine connections with humans. They asked about interests and hobbies. They attempted conversations about topics beyond combat and territory. They made clumsy but sincere efforts at friendship. Lisa, the shy communications officer who had been so overwhelmed by the attention, found herself in an unexpected situation. A young named Al had started visiting her regularly, not to propose marriage, but simply to talk. He was curious about her work, her interests, her thoughts on the universe. At first she was nervous, but over time she began to enjoy his company. He was surprisingly gentle for and his questions showed a genuine desire to understand rather than just acquire. Dr. Pierce started holding weekly sessions on emotional intelligence for interested. What began as academic lectures gradually evolved into something more personal. The attendees began sharing their own experiences, their own struggles with connection and belonging. They discovered that they had feelings they had never acknowledged, desires for closeness that their culture had taught them to suppress. Samuel Gray formed an unlikely friendship with an engineer named. They bonded over their shared passion for problem solving and spent hours discussing technical challenges. When his father fell ill, Samuel was the one who sat with him through the difficult nights, showing him that humans could be there for friends in times of need, and found himself spending more and more time with. Their conversations grew deeper, moving beyond cultural exchange into genuine personal sharing, told about his childhood on Earth, his dreams of exploration, the losses he had experienced during his years in space. In turn, shared his own struggles, the pressure of being the son of a grand matriarch, the loneliness of never quite fitting into his society's expectations. I used to think I wanted a human mate because it would bring honor to my clan, admitted one evening as they watched the stars together. But now I realize that what I really wanted was what humans have, the connection, the sense of being truly known by another being. "And have you found it?" asked. His antennae lifted in what had learned was a smile. "I think I am beginning to, with you, not as a mate but as a friend. Is that strange?" Not strange at all. Friendship is one of the most valuable things in the universe. You humans are very wise. We're not wise. We're just stubborn. We keep trying to connect with each other even when it's hard, even when we get hurt, because we know that life is better together than alone. "Perhaps that is wisdom," said, "knowing that pain is worth risking for the sake of connection." 6 months after the presentation, received a message from Grand Matriarch. He opened it with curiosity, wondering what the fearsome clan leader might want. "Human," the message read, "I wanted to inform you of a development in my life. Following your presentation on human relationships, I began to reconsider my approach to bonding. I reached out to Ambassador, a being I have known for many years but never truly seen before." Smiled, remembering their conversation in the gymnasium. There were beings of pure light energy, as different from thee as it was possible to be. The idea of forming a connection with one of them was almost too strange to imagine. "We have begun what I believe you would call a friendship," the message continued. "We communicate regularly, sharing our thoughts, our concerns, our hopes for the future. It is deeply uncomfortable. I have never allowed myself to be so vulnerable with another being. I have never shared my weaknesses or admitted my fears." Smile widened. "I have never been happier," the message concluded. "Thank you for showing me that strength can take many forms, and that the greatest courage is not in conquering others but in opening yourself to them. My son was right about you. You are a remarkable being, and I am honored to call you a friend." Attached to the message was an image. It showed a shimmering form of golden light sitting together on a balcony overlooking an alien city. They were not touching. They had no solid form to touch, but there was something in their posture that suggested closeness, connection, the beginnings of something beautiful. There was a postscript at the bottom of the message. "Also, I have finally perfected my pizza recipe. No one has died from the cheese in 4 months. You must visit Prime soon to try it. I insist." Laughed out loud. Then he sent a reply accepting the invitation. Some things were worth crossing the galaxy for. The story of human and relations continued to evolve in the years that followed. The marriage proposal frenzy gradually faded, replaced by something more valuable. Genuine cultural exchange. Real friendships. Partnerships built on understanding rather than acquisition. Not every embraced the change. Some clung to the old ways, continuing to see humans as status symbols rather than individuals. but they became a minority over time. The younger generation influenced by the new ideas, sought authentic connection rather than empty honor. And humans, for their part, learned things from the as well. They learned about persistence in the face of impossible odds, about the value of ritual and ceremony, about the deep loyalty that they felt for their clans and families. The alliance between the two species grew stronger than ever, not because of military power or economic benefit, but because of something more fundamental. They had learned to see each other as beings worthy of respect and understanding. They had found common ground in the universal desire for connection. And the lieutenant commander, who had received an unexpected proposal in a diplomatic reception hall, found that his life had been changed forever. He had made friends he never expected. He had learned lessons he never anticipated. He had helped bridge a gap between species that had seemed unbridgeable. He had also, eventually, tried pizza. It was surprisingly good, although he was careful to only eat small portions just in case. Some risks were worth taking, but there was no need to be reckless.